So anyway, let's talk about. Okay, here's where I want to start with, because we're going to get into tech and it's going to be deep and long and crazy and might take up the whole show. But I want to start with an observation that I made recently when watching one of Brandon's shows, and I think it was just last week. Apparently, you are a music expert,
a guru or whatever.
a music guru. You win all of the Guess That Tune contests on Brandon's show. And apparently you have amazing, wide-ranging musical knowledge and expertise.
Yeah.
So where does that come from, he asks. That will be my first question, and then we'll just go from there.
Where does that come from? Well, I guess years of listening to music.
That's a good place to start.
And also being a drummer in a band.
Ah, musician. I should have known that there was that component there. Okay, because I'm an old saxophone player. I think there's something to that makes you get into music more than just as a, say, casual listener, or even some serious listeners who weren't musicians. I think being a musician adds that extra component.
Yeah.
Just my theory, that's all.
Because you got to be a musician to know music really well.
It does help, but it makes a huge difference in terms of being I think a discerning listener.
Yeah. And it's like once you hear that first tune, it's like it just clicks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And especially if that Name That Tune game.
Yeah.
All I have to do is just hear like 1 second of that tune, and then light bulb comes on in my head.
Yeah. See, I've never been that good. I've never been, I mean, I can recognize a tune, some tunes, maybe a lot of tunes, more than I realize right away within a few seconds. But it's not been a specialty for me. It's like it's a skill that I didn't practice, so it kind of comes and goes. So, but there are probably certain artists where if I hear, the first strains of a tune, I'll know them right away. But in the grand scope of things, that number is probably smaller than what maybe what you know.
Yeah.
So, what kind of music did you grow up listening to? Any particular type, or a little bit of everything, or a lot of everything?
Mainly the classic rock, like Art will like this one, the Eagles.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, I'm a CD collector, and Brandon's like, "Oh, he's spending money on his CDs again."
Don't worry about that, Aaron. Let me see. Let's see. Yeah, don't worry about it, okay? Yeah.
I mean,
some of us still buy them.
CDs here.
Yeah.
And I pretty much listen to everything,
Yeah,
it's
cool.
Like modern music,
Mm-hmm.
The stuff from today to, way back.
Yeah. Yeah. I will admit, because, and it's not because I don't like a lot of new music. What I don't like is radio.
Yeah.
And
kind of these days.
Yeah, exactly. I find out more about new music from listening to online casters, online channels like yours and others. And on Studio B, we've got a couple guys. So Dylan's a younger guy. Randy Freder plays everything from way back up until like, about 10 minutes ago it was released. And that's how I learn more about new music and new artists. So unfortunately, because I'm not listening to the radio like I used to, I've kind of like fallen behind, and I'm still discovering stuff. And then life gets in the way anyway. So there's like whole like decades of stuff that I wasn't listening to as actively as I did, say, from the 60s when I was a kid to the 80s when I was closing bars.
Oh, and I even have the B-52's first album.
Oh, cool.
The B-52s, it has Rock Lobster on it.
Oh, yeah. That's I love that tune.
their first album when they first signed with Warner Brothers.
Okay, yeah. And see, you know that stuff. I mean, and again, I think part of that's because you're a musician. There are some, now, in fairness, there are some non-musicians who also soak up that information and they keep it with them. I used to be able to rattle facts off the top of my head simply because I was absorbing that stuff like instantly and not even thinking about the fact that I'm, learning something. It was just something I was interested in. I cared about. I either the artist or the genre or whatever, and then you just had all this accumulated knowledge in your head, and you use it. I mean, when I started doing this back in 2006, it was that accumulated knowledge that I relied on. Now, as I kind of get a little older and things aren't working as quickly as they used to, it's like I'm finding that I'm having to rely on, outside sources, for that information.
And of course, as you get older, your screws get a little more loose.
Yeah, my screws couldn't be any looser, frankly. I have no idea what that means.
Some people will know the term for that.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite artist or a favorite genre?
I would say I'm heavily into the Beatles as a favorite artist.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but I know you're younger than I am. And we'll just leave it at that. Because I saw the Beatles, their first performance on, oh my God, he's got Sgt. Pepper. Is that vinyl?
Yes, it is.
No. Oh my God. Oh, jeez.
The 2017 remix.
I gotta wipe some drool off my face. My sister Terry bought that album when it first came out, and I spent hours just looking at the cover because it was just so fascinating to me. I was like, was it 1967 if I remember right? Yeah. I was like 9 years old, and that album, just the cover fascinated me, and then of course the music itself was just like a feast for the ears.
This one's a 2 LP because it has some of the session takes on it.
Yeah, now see, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
It's released in 2017, so the 50th anniversary.
Gotcha. Yeah. A Hot Wheels yellow submarine car, Robin? Cool. Wow. Oh, that's cool. That is very cool. Yellow submarine car, Hot Wheels. I didn't know such a thing existed until now. That's why I like doing the show. I learn stuff, And
the reason why I wanted a vinyl is because it just sounds better on vinyl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it does. Interestingly enough, though, that was one of the first CDs I bought back in 1983, I think it was. I bought it. Aaron has stepped away from the microphone. He needs a second mic.
I also have it.
Ah, there we go. There you go. Yeah.
That's the 1987 edition.
Okay. I bought that CD because, when CDs were just starting to come out. And people were talking about, the pristine digital quality, and you can hear stuff. You can hear musicians coughing in the background. And at the last chord, as it fades out on A Day in the Life, you can hear the musicians' chairs rattling and somebody coughing and John Lennon sneezing and Ringo picking his nose. I mean, and so I bought the CD, and I played A Day in the Life, and I listened to that last note as it faded out from the piano. That last chord. And sure enough, I heard a creaking chair, and then I heard something else, and then it faded out completely. It's like, that's what I paid for? I think it sounded better on vinyl.
And but wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
You get the you get the inner groove gobbledygook.
Oh well.
You didn't get that. You didn't get that with the U.S. version of Sergeant Pepper.
Hmm.
They didn't put it on the U.S. version.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. And I'm not sure that the CD version that I bought had that, honestly.
It did, because it's from the UK archives.
When was yours released again, the CD that you have?
1987.
1987. See, and that was an anniversary edition. I bought mine before 87.
Wow.
And I think it was probably a digital version of the U.S. release. So because I would have remembered the gobbledygook, and I do know that I did buy it before in 1987.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing about the anniversary edition that came out. It's like, well, why didn't I wait for that? Like, I already got it. But maybe that would have made it more interesting. Honestly, it's like I heard that fading chord, and I heard the creaking chairs, and that was it. I'm like, I paid extra just to hear creaking chairs at the end of one song. Is that all I get for my money?
Well, they might have had the U.S. versions available for a short time.
Yeah.
But then after that, it was pretty much all the UK releases.
Art's twin brother has an original pressing of Sgt. Pepper.
Oh, I do too. I have the US edition on vinyl as well.
Original pressing? You guys.
It's a purple capital.
Okay. Art, you realize your kid's college is paid for. if you decided to sell it. And it's, I couldn't imagine, if I had something like that, I couldn't imagine selling it. I would have to keep that until, bury it with me, frankly. I mean, that's just, that to me is just too special. I just don't know that I could just sell something just to make a profit. Unless I was like really, really desperate for cash and needed to, and lately, mercifully, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, I might have sold it, but now things are better. Thank God. So I could keep that pressing of Sgt. Pepper. What's cool is that, see, as a former musician, as someone who grew up in the 60s and was 10 years too young for Woodstock, because there's no way I'm going to say, Mom, I want to go to Woodstock. You're 11 years old. You're not going to Woodstock. That wouldn't have worked. Okay.
Oh, I saw the Woodstock film. There was a lot of freaky crap that went on.
Indeed, there was. And it wasn't so much the freaky crap that I was interested in. It was the music and the lineup of musical artists that at 9 years old or 11 years old intrigued the hell out of me. It's like I wanted to be there.
Like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Mm-hmm.
Santana.
Yeah.
I heard that John Lennon and the Beatles were supposed to be there, but they broke up.
Yeah.
Woodstock would have been different if the Beatles were there.
Definitely, yes. In fact, there wouldn't have been 200,000. There would have been 1 million people there, frankly. I mean, that would not have surprised me. And of course, among all those legendary musical artists who appeared at and performed at Woodstock, the one that always boggles my mind is Sha-Na-Na.
Oh, wow.
This 50s novelty act. How the hell did they get there?
And they also did a few songs for the Grease soundtrack.
Yeah. And John Bowser Bauman went on to host a game show. And they had their own syndicated TV series for a while, too. Yeah, you could. I think there are clips on YouTube if you ever want to see Sha-Na-Na. I mean, they were a fun act, but I mean, compared to, it's like the other thing. One of the other things about the 60s that boggles my mind is Jimi Hendrix opening for the Monkees. I mean,
oh, wow.
Now, if you know classic rock and 60s rock, your mind is blown right now. But if you don't, it's like, well, who cares? And I can understand that. But you had to be there. We're talking like two different ends of the spectrum, basically. You have Jimi Hendrix and the Prefab Four, as the Monkees were known. I mean, basically four actors who were cast to play the role of musicians. Couple of them actually had musical talent, in fairness. Mike Nesmith was really a great singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Mickey Dolenz was a pretty damn good drummer. And rumor has it Peter Tork could play the bass a little bit. Davy Jones was a cute Brit singer dude. So there was talent there. But I mean, on most of the records that they recorded, that was the Wrecking Crew and their voices, pretty much. So they did record, I believe they recorded one album where they played themselves. They performed, they played their instruments and actually recorded the songs themselves. And it didn't sell well. But they wanted to be taken seriously as musicians. And to an extent, they probably should have been. But still, they were a TV show. And Jimi Hendrix was opening for them. I'm not sure that I can make an analogy for today that would, bring it into focus. Maybe since you're closer to the present than I am, Aaron, you could. I don't know.
And Jimi Hendrix was the one who did the Star-Spangled Banner in Woodstock.
Right, yeah. Which still, to this day, is an amazing performance. It still blows me away when I hear that.
I think I have an MP3 of that one.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Little bit of nostalgia there.
Uh-huh. In the song Hey Jude, you can sometimes hear one man in the background singing effing hell. I've heard about that.
Actually, I think what Robin is referring to is, I think John Lennon said effing hell.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of buried a little bit, but you can kind of hear it faint.
Uh-huh. I have heard about that. I haven't heard it myself because I haven't listened that closely.
Also, get this. At the end of Strawberry Fields Forever, people claim that John said, I buried Paul.
Yeah. I've heard that one too. There are all kinds of Beatles rumors like that.
I mean, there's a lot of like hidden messages in the Beatles songs. You just have to like either play them backwards or
right.
Listen, like,
You realize these are four guys who not only were very talented, but they were also very, very sarcastic.
Actually, on that Lucy in the Sky of Diamonds thing, Arts, it's not about a drug trip. It's actually about a picture that Julian Lennon drew.
Yeah, that is the truth.
That is completely false on what you're kind of saying there, Art. Because it is because the photo that, or the picture that Julian drew. So there you go. There's one myth debunked.
Okay. There's something that I need to try to do, okay? And please bear with me, folks. This is not a music show, but since we're talking about music, turn your volume way up, crank this sucker, and let's see if we can hear John Lennon. Paul owes me 50 quid. Oh, well.
And the thing about that song is the Hey Jude song.
Yeah.
Was the first long single by the Beatles.
The first long single. Okay.
I think it clocks in at 7. I think originally it was clocked in at 7:04.
Yeah.
7:05.
My recording says 7:08, but that's the MP3.
The remaster of the Blue album, it clocks in at 7 minutes and 11 seconds.
Okay. So I'm cheated out of 3 seconds. I want them back. I want those 3 seconds, dang it.
I think the reason for that is because they faded it out a little bit longer on the Blue album remaster.
Yeah. Okay. That would make sense.
But, it's you're also counting dead seconds there too.
Yeah. Interesting that Art would ask about about John Lennon's sons, because Hey Jude is written about one of them.
Hey Jude was originally written about Julian.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 See, I still remember some of this stuff, Aaron. Some of it.
Oh, and you got the Hey Jude album on vinyl.
You have that on vinyl. Oh, that's the White Album, right?
It's actually.
Oh, it is a Hey Jude album?
Well, it's called The Beatles Again, but, it's typically called Hey Jude.
Right. Okay. All right.
And it's on the original Apple label.
So how do you find, or were these albums that you or members of your family were buying and you just happened to have them, or did you go out searching for these after the fact?
I usually search at that album I bought at a record store, and as you could tell, the jacket's a little beat up.
Yeah.
I kind of did a tape job on it.
Okay.
But the record itself is the only side it skips on is side 2 with Hey Jude.
Oh, wouldn't you know it?
But the rest of the record sounds pretty good.
Oh, cool. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. There is this huge vinyl revival, and I think I've told this story before. I worked in a thrift store up in North San Diego County for about 4 years, and young people would come into the store and they would buy vinyl albums. We sold them for like 99 cents, and they would just buy them, and it didn't matter what was on them. They just wanted to hear the sound of music on vinyl, which I thought was amazing.
So yeah, I bought that at a record store that is no longer in downtown Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it for about, I guess, $5.
Wow. That's a pretty good deal, actually. Now, granted, the condition, whatever, but still you'd think
it only skips on the first couple of lines of Hey Jude.
Okay. So you can play essentially almost the entire song once you get past those skips.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I would not have thought that you could find something like that. Especially, in a city like Phoenix, that's not a small city. That's a hell of a find, even with the scratch.
And that's the first pressing that came off the assembly line.
Wow.
Here's the thing about that. The ones that say the Beatles or the Beatles Again are the first pressings.
Okay.
The ones that say Hey Jude after that are the ones that you saw that came off the assembly line.
I see. Okay. All right.
So there's a little known thing about that.
So
and that could be said with the CD versions of that. You can't, I think it exists in the US CD box set.
Okay.
But it wasn't released individually as a release.
Okay.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So Hey Jude is a US and Canada only album.
So that one didn't exist in the UK, essentially.
No.
Yeah.
Not until like later on down the line. Because they usually got things later.
That's interesting.
Own albums.
Yeah, that's interesting that they would have gotten things later than the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
Was that true? Because I'm assuming you're a Beatles scholar since you love them. Was that true in the beginning? Like when once they had conquered America, I mean, were they releasing albums in or even singles in the U.S. first and later in the U.K. or were there simultaneous releases or?
It was different back then. The UK would release their singles before the US did.
Okay.
Or sometimes they'll come out like right about the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like the US albums were completely different from the UK albums.
Right. Yeah.
We had a limit to about 12 songs per album. They didn't have a limit.
Yeah.
So it all depended.
Yeah. I actually have a complete set of Beatles albums in both the UK and the US configurations.
And the Rubber Soul US version has one of the songs from Help on it.
Okay.
Can you guess what song it is?
No, I wouldn't be able to do that. I could cheat, but I'm not going to cheat.
There's actually two.
Okay.
On that album.
Yeah.
It's Only Love.
All right.
And I've Just Seen a Face.
I'll be darned. So
they took Capitol took two songs off the Help album.
Right.
Put them on the
Rubber Soul.
That's US version.
What was the reason for that? I've always been mystified about that. The limited number of songs I can understand, but why do like something like with Rubber Soul and
I guess the reason they didn't want to compete with the UK version.
Okay.
The UK version had like 14 songs, and the UK version had Drive My Car.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was on earlier US albums. So they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's a fascinating story, really, because I've always wondered about, because there are huge differences in some of those earlier releases, like some of the ones that you alluded to, and that was that was very true of I think all of the early albums, that they're different configurations between the U.S. and the U.K.
And truth be told, that the U.S. versions of the albums, they added a little more reverb than they did in the U.K.
Huh. That's interesting.
The UK mixes were more dry than wet mixes as they did.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have Magical Mystery Tour, and that's, truth be told, that's the worst pressing.
Is that an original pressing or a later one?
It has the Rainbow Capitol.
Okay. All right.
It's an original pressing.
Yeah.
And the thing about those mixes is like they have like a fold down mono type of fake stereo for some of those songs. Yeah. I'm like, they could have done better.
Yeah, that was something that was very prevalent in those days, unfortunately.
Strawberry Fields Strawberry Fields Forever sounded like it was in an echo chamber.
Jeez.
I mean, why couldn't they just use the UK mixes?
That's a very good question.
I mean, they had the Butcher Magical Mystery Tour.
Jeez. Now,
and that was Capitol's fault.
Yeah. Okay, help me out because again, it's been a long time, and those brain cells died in the 90s. Probably the 80s, actually, some of them.
Oh my God.
But Capitol and EMI, was Capitol owned by EMI, or were they two separate companies back then?
They were owned by a U.S. branch of EMI.
A U.S. branch of EMI. Okay. All right.
Because we had EMI America.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And UK had EMI, their base EMI out of their country.
Did that relationship affect? Well, obviously it must have, because it almost sounds like they were competing with one another. Because you'd think the same company, they'd have the same releases no matter what country, but clearly their, Capital US sounds like it was fairly autonomous and could do, its own thing to a degree.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the Beatles albums, like their very first one though, was released on a label called VJ.
Yes, Chicago-based R&B label.
Yeah. And I think that was I think that was like introducing the Beatles, I think it was. If I'm guessing correctly.
Okay. If I remember the story, and again, correct me, like I said, a lot of brain cells died in the 80s and 90s. If I remember this correctly, there was a reason Capitol in the U.S. did not believe in the Beatles, which is why those first releases happened on VJ. That's what I seem to remember.
That's also what I heard too.
Yeah.
And that I guess it's true because later on, Capitol picked up the Beatles.
Yeah.
Because they realized they made a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge mistake, potentially huge, if they had let it go on.
Because the CEO of Capitol, was like, oh, the Beatles will never be a thing over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were wrong.
There was a guy who was CEO of Sears, Roebuck and Company, for a number of years back in the 90s. And he worked in the music industry before then. And I know that he signed David Bowie to his first record contract.
Yeah.
I think he also worked for Capitol Records, and I don't know if he had anything to do with, the Beatles and the competitive relationship between Capitol US and EMI and Europe. I don't know that, but I do know that he did sign David Bowie to his first deal. Yeah. Interesting guy, by the way.
And I think David Bowie moved to the record label RCA, I believe.
You know what? You just corrected me. Thank you. Because the guy worked for RCA and he signed Bowie to RCA. So yeah, thank you for that bit of information, because I realized, the guy, he did work for RCA, but I believe he worked for Capitol at one point.
Yeah. And truth be told, the mastering run out on the David Bowie album does say mastered by Capitol.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So I guess they kind of had a little bit of affiliation.
Those things would happen. Yeah.
And I do got a David Bowie album, but it's the album called Lager. I believe it is.
Oh, on vinyl?
From 1979. It
has
the song DJ on it.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, dang, it's a good sounding album.
Yeah.
People should look that up on Spotify or whatever your
and dare I ask, where did you find that one?
My dad had a friend that he worked with, and his friend was giving away a bunch of records.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh boy. He just like all of a sudden gave them to me. I was like,
yeah. Oh wow.
These are yours, buddy, because we went over to one of my dad's friend's house that he worked with at the time.
Yeah.
And they had a whole closet full of records.
Oh my goodness. Oh gee.
I was like looking through them. I was like, oh my gosh. And that's where I found the US version of Sgt. Pepper, I believe.
Ah, okay. Wow.
And I still have that.
Oh God. Yeah. What was the David Bowie album you mentioned specifically? Was that Lodger?
Yeah, Lodger. That's what it is.
And the song you mentioned was
DJ.
DJ.
It's on the B side.
Okay, let's shut up now. I love my music library. I've been collecting this stuff for like ages. All kinds of stuff. Paid for most of it. But it's just nice to have, I tell you. It has gotten me through a lot of stuff, you know. And I'm glad I still have it. I almost lost it. But I decided to make redundant backups of it. So I have like, I think at last count, I think I have like 5 copies of at least 90% of the music and 3 copies of 100%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's how obsessive I am about it.
And I rip all my CDs in the FLAC format.
I've started doing that recently. Most of the majority though is still MP3, but I've the recent stuff I've purchased, I rip in FLAC as well.
Yeah. And FLAC is starting to get widely supported in like head units of cars.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's good to know. That's very good to know.
My mom's truck, she has a car stereo that supports FLAC.
Ah, nice. That's very nice.
So what I've been doing is I've been ripping like all of these CDs in FLAC.
There you go. That's cool. So yeah, we should probably transition to tech talk, you know?
Yeah, we should.
And I'll tell you what, this would probably be a good time for me to feed a cat. She's been awfully quiet, which impresses me, but I guarantee you, as soon as I move from this chair, she's going to start howling.
We should probably take a bit of an intermission.
Yeah, let's do our intermission here, and when we come back, it's going to be tech talk, guys and gals.